Hello YouTube family. I wanted to make a video today to continue on with what I talked about yesterday. There was other things I wanted in that video, but it was running kind of long, so I cut it off and was planning to make a video today. So today after work I've sat down and come up with hopefully a much shorter video that will just finish off the discussion from yesterday, which was about the possible splintering of the two parties. And if you like these videos, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and let's jump into our discussion for today, which yesterday was about with the as I was saying, there seem to be a lot of people that would like to see more political parties than just the two that we have. I don't know how realistic that is anytime soon, but as I said, I could see certainly a splitting of the parties to at least three parties, which would be a right wing, a left wing, and then a right of center mixture of corporate establishment Republicans and Democrats. And right now I can't really tell you. I don't know who would divide up where, because for the Republicans, so many of them right now are pandering to the vast majority are pandering to the extreme right that was created by Donald Trump. And the issue is, throughout my life, the Republican Party has been moving further and further to the right. And with Donald Trump, there was an even further jump right to pseudo-fascism. I mean, Donald Trump, what he wanted to do was to be a fascist dictator from all accounts of, watching his behavior, the way he talked, the way he wanted to be able to say, do this and it gets done. And along with the possibility of more parties, my fear is that there's a possibility of fewer parties. Right now we have two primary parties, Democrats and Republicans. And rather being split on ideology, you have a split on, if I'm Democrat, I don't want Republicans to pass anything. If I'm Republican, I don't want Democrats to pass anything. This partisan divide that's created so much gridlock in our government, and is, I would assume, one of the first things people would bring up when they talk about their issues with government is the gridlock, the fact that it seems like they can't get anything done. And since the debacle of the end of the Trump administration, you've had, I think it's around 30 to 40,000 registered Republicans who either switched party affiliations to Democrat or to Independent or to Libertarian. But what they decidedly came to was the conclusion that they could not be a Republican any longer. You've had a number of elected Republicans choose not to run for re-election since Donald Trump became president. With the impeachment that's going on, it's about to start tomorrow, you have a majority of the Republicans in the House opposed to impeaching Donald Trump. You have, I think it was 45 senators in the Senate, Republican senators, that signed on to Rand Paul's declaration that it's unconstitutional to impeach a president who's out of office, which there is no decided legal basis for his claim. That's basically Rand Paul's opinion as a eye doctor. And I mean, honestly, I would want a second opinion. But My fear is that the Republicans are going to move so far right, and they're going to disenfranchise so much of the population that it will be nearly impossible for them to win a national election. And in addition to that, it might be very difficult for them to win a statewide election in a great number of states. The Republican Party already represents a minority of the population. I mean, let's face it, their best odds of winning elections are to gerrymander districts for the House, to purge voter rolls, and to put in as many obstacles as possible to try and decrease voter turnout. I mean, when you're a party who counts on cheating democracy as your best bet of being able to win elections, you're doing something wrong. I mean, we are a democratic republic, and one of the things people tout the most, including Republicans, is our wonderful democracy that they're constantly trying to undermine. And I mean, when you're actively trying to get people to not vote or to not be able to vote, you are already on a losing side. But all of this adds up to more and more the demographics in this country favor the Democrats. As long as voter turnout is high, Democrats are more likely to win. If voter turnout is low, Republicans are more likely to win. That's why you'll have oftentimes Republicans pick up seats in the House, seats in the Senate, local seats around states in midterm elections, because not as many people show up and vote in midterm elections. Democrats lately have been sort of turning things around. I mean, I honestly didn't think Democrats would win the Senate in the runoffs in Georgia, because typically you don't have as many people show up and vote in runoff elections. In the 2020 election, Donald Trump carried 2,497 counties. Those 2,497 counties account for only around 30% of the United States GDP. Joe Biden won only 477 counties. Donald Trump won over 2,000. He won 2,020 more counties than Joe Biden. The counties that Joe Biden won accounted for around 70% of the country's GDP. Most of the economic activity in this country is happening in counties that the Democrats are winning in elections. Red counties are typically rural, less populated, less likely to have college degrees, less likely to have professional jobs, and are much whiter. This is a graphic for the information on the counties. Blue counties tend to be more racially diverse, have larger populations, are more likely to have college degrees, and work professional occupations. And also in 2016, when it was Trump versus Hillary Clinton, Clinton won counties that accounted for around 64% of the GDP. Trump won counties that accounted for around 36% of the GDP. So where the money generated in this country is happening at are the counties that Democrats are winning. Democrats are typically winning large cities where you have a lot of corporations, a lot of corporation headquarters, and the majority of the U.S. population. That's why you'll have these maps during elections, and people will say, there's an awful lot of red on the map. Why did the Democrat win? Because so much of that red, I mean, as I've told one person in a discussion before, land doesn't vote. And if you have large tracts of land with very few people, chances are it's red. So with the way that things are breaking down, Democrats are confronting problems facing a larger portion of the United States and issues that are facing, that have a larger bearing on the overall economic well-being of the country. Republicans have been stoking hostility and indignation of a minority of the population. So you have these red counties that are staunchly red, and what you find is low opportunity, lower paying jobs, and people get angry. They get indignant that they feel like everybody's focusing on these major cities. All of the funding, all of the resources are in these major cities. People in these rural areas may have to drive to a larger city, larger metropolitan area that tends to be a blue county because it's a population center, just to go shopping for certain things that aren't available in the rural areas where they live because the population isn't there for certain things to exist as far as consumer products. And my fear is that the Republican Party will move so far right that they will run into the problem of irrelevancy when it comes to large elections. And that, what it would end up causing is for the Democrats to end up dominating presidential elections, have a larger chance of dominating statewide elections like senatorial elections, gubernatorial elections. And even though I tend to support Democrats over Republicans, if one party had a constant control of the country, I do not believe they would hold their worst desires in check. I mean, basically, they would be doing what they wanted. You wouldn't have the other party. And as I said before, Republicans, right now, most of what they do is they throw culture war red meat out to their base. Second Amendment, abortion. They throw to these people in the red counties these cultural war things to get all worked up about. Who's going to what bathroom? Is it a guy, a girl? Is it a transgender? They get so worked up over these issues that really aren't massive issues. They just aren't. And my fear is that the Republican Party is going to run themselves into irrelevancy. And they will appeal to such a minority of the country that they just will have a difficult time gaining seats in politics. And what I want to see is for the Republican Party to turn back into a party of policy, where they have a policy agenda, not some racist, xenophobic, bigoted agenda of, we need to be able to put up a wall so brown people can't get in. Which is insane, Even during the debate over the wall, people would bring up that over half of the people who were here illegally came by plane. A wall isn't going to stop them. So, they make issues that are hateful issues rather than saying, because like for me, I might say, that I believe the best way forward on healthcare is Medicare for all. I think that would end up getting us the lowest cost in the country for medical care, and it would allow the largest number of people to be receiving medical care. It would be 100%. Everybody would be covered because it would be a government paying system. You go to the doctor, you see the doctor. If you have to go to the hospital, you go to the hospital. The government pays. You don't pay anything when you go. It's all covered in our taxes. Whereas a more right-wing person might say, I don't think that's the best way forward. I think the best way forward is to break the Affordable Care Act up and have every state institute their own Affordable Care Act, like what Massachusetts did, and then the federal government chip money into the states to help them fund their own system. And that could be your perspective. And that's a legitimate debate to have. It is. I mean, you can debate what the best way forward on that policy is of getting health care, affordable health care to everybody in the country. That would be the goal, I would hope, is for everyone to have health care. And that would be a policy debate. But a policy debate isn't saying, I believe Medicare for all is the best way forward on health care, and you saying, oh, you're just a socialist, you're a communist, you want to turn us into Venezuela. That's not a policy debate. That's me wanting to debate policy and you wanting to be hateful. That's what it is. And that's why Republicans right now are turning off so many people, because they don't want to have substantial debates on policy to try and hammer out a policy that will help the country and that they agree with. I mean, with this recent maneuver of the Democrats in the Senate, they've gone through the process so they can get the stimulus package that Biden proposed passed through reconciliation. In order to do that, they had to go through what was called Votapalooza, where anybody can can suggest any amendment to the bill, and it has to be handled on a floor vote. And the Republicans spent around 14 hours throwing out, I think, around 500 or 600 amendment ideas, and most of them were ridiculous, ludicrous. I mean, it was a political ploy just to make it take longer. I mean, they spent 14 hours hearing a lot of ridiculous amendments. Some of the amendments, Democrats got voted into the bill. They won't necessarily stay because then it has to go to the House, but the Votapalooza, that's one of those things. In order to go through reconciliation, you have to go through this period where everybody can suggest amendments to the bill, and Republicans choose to play games with it and to make a childish mockery of the process, rather than getting together prior to that time and saying, what are amendments, legit amendments, we would like to propose, and putting their heads together and coming up with policies they actually want. Because the thing is, right now, the Republicans, I don't think they have any policies outside of tax cuts for their donors. They don't have any policies they're pushing. That's one of the problems they have. You have Democrats who are being pushed towards policies because you have progressives in the Democrat Party that are pushing them towards policies. People like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, Katie Porter, people that want to make legislative positive change in the country. Whereas Republicans for so long have been trying to block what Democrats do, and they play these games where they call people names. Oh, you're a communist, you're socialist, you're trying to destroy democracy, which is laughable because Republicans are literally trying to destroy democracy. They try and disenfranchise large swaths of the voting population to try and win elections. They had a president in office who riled up the right-wing fanatics of their base to attack the U.S. Capitol building. And my fear is that the Republican Party is going to move themselves to a irrelevant point where most of the country is just going to ignore them. And people complain about being in a flyover state. They're saying, well, people care about the big cities on the coasts, and there's a whole lot of Americans in between there. There are a lot of Americans in between there, in a lot of rural, sparsely populated areas. And getting mad and acting childish isn't going to make people pay attention to you. I don't want the Republican Party to become a flyover party that has these angered people in dying towns where opportunities dried up to continue pushing cultural war BS when there are serious issues to be had. I would like to see Republican politicians move back to having substantive policy positions, because that's their job. The Republican Party's job is to hold the Democrat Party to account. The Democrat Party's job is to hold the Republican Party to account. And if the Republicans fall into irrelevancy, the Democrat Party can do whatever they want. At that point, we're in a single-party dictatorship that nobody would want. I certainly wouldn't want it. And that's what I wanted to add to yesterday's video, was along with the possibility of splintering and creating more parties. If the Republican Party keeps moving to the right, keeps getting more ridiculous, there's the possibility they could become so irrelevant that on a national scale, they can't compete. As it is right now, they're struggling to compete on a national scale as far as the country's population goes. The Republican Party, since 1992, has won a presidential election's popular vote one time since 1992. And that was George W. Bush's re-election campaign. Since 1992, George W. Bush won the popular vote in his re-election campaign. Outside of that, the Republican Party has not won the popular vote in this country. And that's what it's almost 30 years. And next year it'll be 30 years. And the Republican Party has won the popular vote in a presidential election once in 30 years, come next year. And I don't want to see us fall into a situation where we have one party. If the Republican Party moves themselves to irrelevancy, hopefully there will be some other party that will pop up to cover some right position right of the Democrats. Or a party that pops up left of the Democrats. It wouldn't be bad. To me, it wouldn't be bad, because I'm a left-wing person. I wouldn't hate it if the Republican Party dropped off into irrelevancy and you had a lot of white supremacist and xenophobic people and homophobic people and transphobic people that were die-hard in this small percentage of the U.S. population supporting this crazy right-wing party that the Republican Party has become. And the Democrats are right now are right of center. They could stay where they're at, and then the left-wing party could come up to challenge the Democrats, and the Republican Party can play in the mud and call people names and socialist and all that, and this other party can compete with the Democrat Party, and then you'd have some moderate Republicans, I would assume, that would move over to the Democrat Party to try and push them further right. But that's my fear, is that the Republican Party will either dissolve or move into irrelevancy so far right on the spectrum that most people don't even consider them anymore. But again, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, and you have a good day.